Hola, community. Welcome to BlenderToday 2024. Please let me know if everything is going okay. I had some technical issues to begin the year with a smile. What a year! Speaking of 2024, Blender has just turned 30 years. 2024 is gonna see 3 releases: Blender 4.1, 4.2 LTS, 4.3 with whatever it. Like this year, we're supposed to get EEVEE next. Well, not supposed. We are going to get EEVEE next. Grease Pencil 3, a real-time compositor, like replacing all the compositors. So everything should be as fast as it gets. Real time, like is interactive mode coming back? I heard something about it. It's just all over the place. Blender this year is gonna take off. Thanks to everybody, especially you, who have contributed to making the 30th birthday of Blender so special. The video, I don't know if you watched it, it's on this channel, you probably watched it. It's a celebration of the 30 years. You can see people that were here. Unfortunately, I wasn't here. Thanks for people asking in the comments. I wasn't here when this was shot, but yeah, you can, at some point, Francesco comes here with a laptop and it shows not only people who have contributed to previous open projects, people who didn't make it to this, so you can see everybody that makes it special. And of course, Blender conference, people, talks, presentations, that's there, and everyone who contributes to Blender. So thank you, because you're making this happen. And I said again, there's a lot to come in 2024. This episode, we are going to have a, sorry, by the way, let me just a little hint of what's going to come this year. So thank you, Saskia, for this sweater, super nice. The episode today is going to cover everything that is new in Blender since I left. Dalai has covered for me, thank you, Dalai. He has covered some of the news. He also made a holiday special with Brecht and Francesco, something that I've never managed to do myself. So well done, Dalai. But I will cover everything from there. I'm not gonna go into as detail as Dalai did, so I might repeat some of the things that he covered, but I'm gonna try to go fast because we do have a lot to cover today. Other than that, the Blender Development Fund also saw a big increase, not only because of the one-time donations and all the work that was done under the hood. You probably have seen the website before with the boxes, but all the work under the hood to make this happen, to make the one-time donations happen, is going to help Blender a lot. And also making it easier for people without an account, without a Blender ID, to contribute. We had, I think it's over 1,000 people more in the individuals subscribed, so that's awesome. Is this live or pre-recorded? It is really live, as you can tell by the the great technical issues that we're having. Okay, so let me begin. There is so much to cover. I have a list which covers from animation, compositor, curves, EEVEE, geometry nodes, UI, mesh, performance improvements. So many performance improvements, really. If you are using the video sequence, just a spoiler alert, if you're using the video sequence editor and you were just on holidays like I was during the last month, get the latest Blender, because it's going to run much faster everywhere. Like the work these people have been doing in only 1 month. And I'm usually up to date with what's new in Blender. Imagine people that are just don't check for a couple months. Let's start with the first. Where is my here? My Linux show player soundboard. Let's start with what is new in Blender in 2024. Blender 4.1, by the way, because just a small note, Blender 4.0.2 was released. It's a fixed release, corrected release, only fixes compared to 4.0.1 and 4.0, of course. There is when you go to the Buildbot, there used to be a 4.0.3 release candidate. False alarm. 4.0.3 is not going to be released because it only contains a few fixes that it's not worth a full release and taking time from developers to make a full release. So if you had that one, it's just the same as 4.0.2 with a couple, literally 2 bug fixes compared to the previous one. So now all hands on 4.1 alpha for the next 3 weeks, I think. We have only 2 more 3 weeks of Beacon 2, and then we move into 4.1 beta, which now that I think of it, we have to pick a splash screen for that. Then 4.2 alpha. How long was I away? Hey, the dudes, how are ya? Nice to see you. Nice to see everyone. I'm checking the chat here on the side, but it's on the other screen, so I might miss some greetings. Other than that, this week there will be 2 new releases, by the way. LTS 4.3 and 3.3 and 3.6. There will be a new one. Which number are we already? Because in December there was another one. 3.6.7 was in December, so there will be 3.6.8 this week, and 3.3.14 was in December. So this week we'll see 3.3.15. That's that's where your money, where your donations go, in keeping all releases alive, LTS releases alive, and making new ones, and making this show, and getting these sweaters. No, kidding. Your donations don't go towards this sweater. This was a gift from Saskia. Next, let's start with what is new in Blender this week. Well, first, new authors, by the way. A few days ago, the list of authors was updated. It gets updated every now and then, regularly. It's not automatic, it's by hand, it's manually done. But a lot of new names were added from contributors. 20 new names were added to the list of authors of the Blender code. So 20 new people are owners of the code in Blender. So super nice. Let's see. Well, everybody owns Blender. Let's see what with Alembic. So it's nice to see Alembic updates. Philip has added 2 features to Alembic. One, read velocities on points. This is in order to make motion blur work when importing Alembic. Super nice. So this allows rendering with proper motion blur for Alembic points, which of course are still imported as meshes. We're just lacking the velocity attribute when directly rendering as points in cycles. Another update is that the Alembic will now export render resolutions on the camera. Blender itself stores the render resolution in the scene. This resolution belongs to the scene. Unfortunately, it would be actually pretty nice to have each camera with its own resolution, maybe as an override, maybe as a fallback with the scene to the scene, but have each camera to have its own render resolution. But Alembic works that way, as Houdini, for example, does. So Blender will attach that information to the camera, so when you export it, it works as expected. Let's see. Next, animation. There's a bunch of updates in animation. I'm gonna try to go quickly in some of them, to all of them. By the way, the full list of everything, there is nearly 1,500 commits were done since the last time that we talked to each other in November. By the way, the full list is on blender.community in the massive thread that says BlenderToday Live 245. I'm a bit sick, by the way. Sorry if I start coughing at some point. I'm a bit sick. I went from summer to winter in a few days. So, so view of curve property in the graph editor. This is amazing. This is the equivalent of the dot key. You know, like when you center the view in an object. That, but in the graph editor. Well, not in the graph editor, but in the any property. If you have a graph editor open and you have an animated property, you can right click view in graph editor, like expose. Basically, it would turn your graph editor, it would filter it by the property that you just clicked on. So it is super handy. You can see basically instead of going in the graph editor, selecting the object, try to find where the property is, this will do it for you. Actually, there must be a video here, I think, a video demo. So you just select, right click, show, it says show, but I think the final result is view. We use the word view, and super nice. It just centers the view even. Nice. Next, insert keyframes without keying sets. When animators want to key something in the viewport, the code needs to know which properties should be keyed. But sometimes it shouldn't error if it doesn't find the keying set. It should have some kind of fallback. So now there is a new user preference option to choose one or more of location, rotation, scale, rotation mode, or custom properties to in the user preference to use as a fallback for keying when there are no keying sets. The restrict range of F-curve to key list. This is a performance improvement that's done on the dope sheet, so you can see it for yourself. Basically, when you have a ton of keys in the summary, so in the top, but you're only viewing a few at a time, Blender will still calculate everything basically. And you can see here on the left side, well, on the right is the new, so smooth. And on the left, you can see how choppy it is. And let me move the mouse so you can see how choppy it is. So super nice. And of course, the less you have, the less items you have, the faster it gets. Now it doesn't calculate everything. And even transformation is not only browsing, but transforming keys is much faster. So nice that developers are working on performance. So thank you, Christoph, for this improvement. Time for UI improvement. The markers were drawing, the line of the markers was drawing on over the marker, and the color of the marker when selected wasn't matching the highlight color of the rest of the line. So now it does. Thank you, Harley, for noticing the small details, or whoever has reported this issue. Another change by Chris, change how only insert needed works. Oh yeah, all right. This is something you need to check out if you are an animator, because this will change your workflow. Basically, if there is a key on the current frame and it has the same value as the current frame, the only insert needed is going to be skipped, doesn't calculate it. And the same, if there is no keyframe, but the F-curve evaluates to the same value, skip it. So we won't add a keyframe there. And in all the other cases, it will add a keyframe. So basically, if you want, I mean, this kind of, sometimes it is useful to add a key where there is already a F-curve, but the value already exists. So for that, you just use a regular insert keyframe, I guess, or a bake or a sample. Next, another change by Nate. The NLA context menu now has a few new options for adding and removing. Actually, we can just look at the code. Add track above selected, and delete track in the context menu of the NLA. Speaking of the NLA, refactor, also by Nate, to be more in line with the video sequencer and other animation editors. So yeah, I remember looking at this at the NLA with a massive edit menu, and now it actually has a menu that is track and strip, similar to the others, and an add menu too, similar to how the others work. Add, track, strip. Is that how it looks at the moment? Let me check. Yeah, NLA, timeline, no, NLA. Yeah, view, select, marker, add, track, strip. View, select, add object, view, select, add. Nice, they even kept the order. Thank you, nice. Next change. New operator in the where is that? In the dope? No, in the graph editor. Bake channel operator. This is a replacement for the workflow that uses the bake curve and unbake curve to quickly generate dense key data. Compared to the existing workflow, it has the advantage of allowing the user more control over the key types and distance between the keys, as well as the frame range affected. So much more improved. One, has a range. You can check which range to bake. Step, you can choose the step for which to bake. For example, when you animate on twos, or bake, even bake of subframes. Nice. Remove the existing keys to remove whatever is not on the specified baking range. Interpolation type, to choose the interpolation mode used for the new keys. Constant or Bezier, that's super nice. Or even bake modifiers. If enabled, bakes the effect of the modifier stack to keys and deletes the modifier stack. Nice. Awesome. Should it be a separate option to delete or not the modifiers? No, because if you bake the modifiers and you keep the modifiers, you have... Yeah, no, doesn't make sense. Never mind. I didn't say anything. The operator can be found in the graph editor under channel, bake channels. Sorry, my English still catching up. I spent like 6-7 weeks without speaking English. The next change is from Zebran. Well, it's a collection of changes related to bone collections, to the collection system, the new collection system. So let's see. Add checks for system overrides to bone collection operators. Many operators related to bone collections would seem like they're available, even though they were not. Maybe they had a system override which would make it not editable. So now they should look like when they should show if you can use them or not. The same with other changes, but first, actually this is kind of huge. Make bone collections hierarchical. Bone collections were introduced in Blender 4.0, but in Blender 4.1, because it was committed 3 weeks ago, in Blender 4.1 we're going to have hierarchical collections, so you can have nested collections of bones. Nice. And they even display as such, because they don't use the is there a picture? No picture, but they now use the tree view, similar to light linking, or well, like an outliner, or like the catalogs in the asset browser. Nice. Updated the M and Shift M operators to work with hierarchical bone collections, similar to regular collections. Now you can have, nice. Add more layers. Layers of this is more than layers. This is collections. Nice. Speaking of collections, there is add bone collection parent access to RNA. This is related to Python. This is if you're working with add-ons or scripts that make use of bone collections. Now you can have a read-only property for checking which one is the parent of such a collection, because now there's hierarchy. And actually the next commit makes it writable, so never mind, it's not a read only, it's also writable, so you can change the parent via Python. You can also access the bones recursive property, which returns a set of bones assigned to that bone collection or any of its child collections. The find index function was replaced with just a simple .index. Then, well, related to the bake property that we were talking about, or action bake custom properties. Now you can add custom properties to the action bake. Objects will bake all animatable custom properties. Armatures will bake all the bone custom properties, as well as the object level armature custom property. Nice. In the outliner, the bone collections are also going to be shown in hierarchy. So it makes sense even. The move to parent function in bone collections related to the API changes mentioned before now has been replaced with a child number that you can just simply set to whatever. Instead of moving to the parent, you can just set the child to be whatever. More flexibility. A few checks. Ensure the active bone collection doesn't change when adding a new one. It's nice. You add a new collection, it doesn't become active by default. Although maybe it's that what you would desire. Maybe. The same with move. Move now retains the active collection. So if you have one active collection and you move another one, it doesn't change whatever is active. Then there is a new property that checks if the bone collection is visible effectively. What does it mean? Is visible would return if the bone collection has the visibility on and off. Effectively, the effectively part will check if the parent is visible or not, because you can have a bone collection that says it's set to visible but the parent to not be visible, so this will return false in this case. Next, prevent bone collection context menu. Prevent operations on linked collections. So linked collections that are not editable will not let you do bone collections operations like moving or anything related to changing how that collection works and looks. And add, but when you want to edit those, when you want to override those settings, now you can for bone collection visibility. So if you import a character that has a bone collection with the visibility, I don't know, hidden, and you want to show it, you can override now that property and make it visible on a linked character without affecting the original character. Nice. So cool. Okay, let's change topic to A. We're still in letter A. Gee, and it's almost 6 o'clock. Okay. Next, A for assets. Today is gonna be a long one. Today is gonna be a long show. Download previews when fetching asset list for menus. This is a performance improvement. So when fetching the list of assets, download the previews. Just keep it. Another performance improvement, but for Audaspace. Audaspace. It is the library used for sound handling in Blender. For example, for the sequencer. Optimizing this library itself is essential to make playback on the video sequencer and other parts of Blender be much faster. So Adas has been working not only on this, but in so many improvements that we're gonna see later for the video sequence editor that should make just playback and editing in the video, just being in the video sequence editor so much faster. For example, in this case, by making the resampling faster, resampling of audio faster, what used to take 92 seconds on Windows, for example, to render out frames of a sequence of a video editor sequence, 92 seconds to 73 seconds, 20 more seconds of your life to spare. And on a Mac, the change goes from 70 to 62 seconds. So there you go. There you have 8 more seconds of your life to enjoy. Isn't that faster? Isn't that exciting when things get faster? Also related to improvement, in BMesh we have hands going into the code and making things so much faster depending on the cases. For example, in BMesh, improve performance by copying attributes in the same mesh. When you copy attributes from one part to another, now things could have gotten much slower really quickly, like quadratic time complexity. For example, copying a few attributes was fast, but copying a higher amount of layers would be slower. In this case, for example, testing with around 47 Boolean attributes, copying 250,000 vertices went from 2.3 seconds to 300 milliseconds. So much faster. And this is scales basically. If you have a 500,000 or a million vertices to copy, this also should be much faster. Then a similar concept was applied when copying elements within the same mesh, and also optimize copying attributes from many elements at once. So thanks to multi-threading, I assume, this should be much faster. So with 50 or so layers, a 10x difference is easily observable. So much faster. I don't know if it's multi-threading, but magic, and it's now faster. The next improvement, let's see. Well, I don't know if it's, yeah, it is an improvement. It is for sure. CMake and CLang format. Blender, and let me go full screen. Python has been upgraded. It's 2024. Python 3.10 is long gone. Now, welcome Python 3.11. Ta-da! 3.11 brings many performance improvements in general and other improvements, I bet. So yeah, now the default is 3.11. Blender 3.11. Blender will compile with 3.11. I think for Mac OS at the time, like 3 weeks ago, this was still 3.10 for some reason, but eventually they will all catch up. This is part of updating Blender to be compliant with the VFX platform. There are many libraries that are being updated. NumPy, OpenEXR, OpenSubdiv, OpenVDV, OpenColor.io, and Boost, among other ones. The VFX platform, sorry if I blinded you with a white screen, it's not my fault, it's this website that is. Let's turn on Dark Reader. Okay, it's not really. I need to whitelist this website. How can I add it? This website? There. Because I'm also gonna be there. Ah, nice. The reference platform. This is what the industry uses as a reference to update their libraries. Python is the biggest change that you will notice, probably 3.11, especially if you use add-ons or that have not been updated. But yeah, OpenEXR, OpenSubdiv, and many others. OpenVDV 11, for example, and what else? OpenColor.io, and so many more. Another update related to library, well, not to the code itself, that you may want to check if you code in Blender, if you compile Blender, it's the CLang format has been updated to version 17, which means that many parts of Blender have been updated, and as in the code, you know, it has like adding a new line before the bracket, just making everything a bit more tidy. But it's a big change, 2,000 lines of code, basically. If you use the Blender's internal CLang format binary, then you shouldn't have any issues. All right, let's go back to performance improvement, this time in color management. Multi-thread image buffer color management transform. What does it mean? Well, it means that sometimes Blender was doing way too much work, or it was using a single thread when converting the color spaces between of images, even if it wasn't needed. In this case, the overall playback saw a little improvement from 3.4 FPS to 4.03 FPS, a little bit FPS, but the actual image buffer to sequencer space function has been seen a larger increase in performance from 217 milliseconds to 86 milliseconds. This again is one of many updates that many improvements in performance that put all together give you a much bigger boost. With the letter C, we are going to move into Compositor. How's the chat going, by the way? Mate. Ah, yeah, that's good. That's a good, instead of just, there you go. Prost. Cheers. Mate. How's the chat? Is Pablo an AI person? Could it be more far than that? I'm barely a person. Now, I will get better. The Compositor has seen many improvements in all its shapes. The regular Compositor, the UI of the Compositor, the full frame, and the real-time/GPU Compositor has seen updates. 1. This is better node visibility for default node tree. In the Compositor, have you ever noticed that when you press use nodes, the actual nodes will show up anywhere but in the middle of the screen, in the center? Now it has been fixed. So thank you, Habib. Now when you press use nodes, they will show up in the center of the screen. Small detail. And if you look at the code, it was on purpose or something. 300F, 400F. It was that maybe because it was a 3x4 screen back then? Remember, the Compositor is from 2006. Some people were babies then. 2005 actually, now that I think of it. There's people working, having a job using the Compositor now that they were like kids when it came out. It's crazy. Also, changes that I don't know who asked for, but they're very welcome. Also by Habib. The split viewer node, that node that it was like a viewer, but split, allows you to split in two. You're hooking two images and you can use that as a viewer. I never thought that didn't need to be a viewer, right? It can just be used for splitting an image in two. So Habib went ahead and did that. So the node is just the same, just as it used to be, but now it does not call a viewer anymore. It just spits out an image. And it's now under utilities, similar to Switch, and there is some versioning also because everything has to behave like any other mode, and it doesn't have the preview by default anymore because it's no longer a viewer. You can still enable the preview by clicking on the material icon, but isn't that nice? That's some people look into this things. GPU Compositor. The GPU Compositor now uses full precision, since some passes will only make sense in full precision, like the Cryptomat and the C depth. So now you'll see it's a small change, but basically it uses a bit more memory, to be precise. Refactor file output node. The file output node has been refactored. This is a chance to fix some of the issues with the existing implementation, like lossy compression of data passes, inability to save single values passes, and also some of the code is now shared with all the compositors, within all the compositors. So nice. Speaking of the Compositor, it will now only run when needed. So it could happen. Maybe you rely on this, by the way. just saying, just a heads up. Maybe you rely on the Compositor updating when no image editor or no backdrop is enabled. Well, don't rely on that anymore, because now the Compositor will not execute if there is no image editor, like you don't have the render window or an image editor, or if you don't have the backdrop on. Sorry. Next, support the viewer offset in the GPU Compositor. Now, this patch adds support for viewer offsets in the experimental GPU Compositor. Fallback to render size for viewing values. Sometimes, have you ever tried to view some values and it would fail? It didn't have to fail. Now it will, because basically it failed because it didn't have a render size. So now you can preview value nodes or just regular values, and it will fall back to the render size, even if there's none set. Redesigns. The Sunbeams node has been redesigned and refactored and everything. It looks so much better. Let's first, the alpha was weird. Like there were some weird alpha issues. Not anymore. Then it was very noisy, basically. Like, look at this noise. Well, let's see if I can here and then here. So noise, not noise. Noise, nice. So it went from noise to nice. Also, pixelation. Look at how pixelated it used to be. And now it looks very, very different, but non-pixelated. So yeah, your renders are going to look very different if you use the sunbeams in the new, well, if you use the sunbeams and your render in 4.1 is going to look very different from 4.0. So don't render half of your feature film in 4.0 and half of it in 4.1 if you use the sunbeams. Or if you use Blender at all. It's always better to just stick to one version to render your entire projects. Let me close a few million tabs here. Boom. Next. Oh, by the way, this is also not only for GPU but also for CPU. Both of them now look much better. Then depth graph, an improvement by Brecht to make it so when there is no need to update the image, don't update it. So the compositor should feel a bit more snappy. So when there is no need to update, don't. So nice. Full frame compositor, 2 changes by Habib also. Unify behavior of size inference with the real-time compositor. So it looks more like when you switch between compositors, it looks like you didn't switch. The scaling behavior also has been unified with the full frame and the real-time compositor. And the real-time compositor, which also known as GPU, has support for 3 new nodes. First, the crypto matte node, which many people have been waiting for this for long. By many, it's been me. Crypto matte now works in real time in the viewport. Isn't that amazing? Also, the focus node is now supported in the viewport or in the real-time compositor, and the vector blur node as well. Vector blur brings me back to Blender internal, or should I say Blender eternal days, back in 2.7. Some rewrites has happened. One, the in-paint node has been rewritten to work with the GPU based compositor. The bokeh kernel image is now cached, so it should be faster to use and better performance and reusability. It has been rewritten so it can be reused by the focus node as well. There is now support for static cached images, also improving performance and avoiding calculation when it's not needed. Aspect correct mask inputs. This patch implements aspect ratio correction for mask inputs if the size mode is set to render size. So nice. All right, that is all for the compositor. And we're only in letter C. Should I split today in 2 episodes? In the chat, let me know in the chat. How are you, chat? Hola, Pablo. Hola, everyone. Should I split today in 2 episodes or not? Let's just go and get rid of this, and next week we can do it in. We can go back to less features. C for curves. It's okay. Let's get ghost mode. No. Okay. Next, curves. Curves is the. I don't know if you ever noticed in the editing part of Blender, in the user preferences, you have curve and curves. When you convert an object, you can convert it to curve or curves. Have you ever noticed? There is curves, there is Grid Pencil V3 even, or curve. What does it mean, curves? Well, there are 2 types of data blocks. Blender is still in that phase of having 2 data blocks that do sort of the same but not really the same. They support different features. One is faster, one is more feature complete, so it's getting there. For example, I'm going to mention now some features that are old, but like you already know. For example, support for the draw edit, for the draw tool, draw curve. Everybody's using that. Well, now the new curves data block supports it, the one that supports geometry nodes and all that. Edit mode duplicate operator. Yeah, that's been there for a while, but now it's in the curves, the new curves data block. This is by Hans, but the previous one was by Laurinas Duburas. Thank you, Laurinas. Tilt control also added to the new data block. View selected in edit mode also added. Basic custom normal support. A extrude operator also added to the new curves. But also, this is, I think this is new. Or is it? Add as NURBS option to the draw tool. So when you draw, you can draw as regular curves or also as NURBS. Who said NURBS are dead in Blender? I said. So I retract. All right. Next improvement. Let's switch to, well, still in the letter C for cycles. 1. Open image denoise. Enable HIP devices for open image denoise. Hardware denoising for HIP calculation, HIP compute devices. Awesome. Display message in render devices preferences when they are disabled. Yeah, before it wouldn't say anything. Cycle is disabled in this build. Sometimes it would just not show anything, show empty. So now it does. Nice. And now it tells you enable cycles render engine add-on to use cycles. Who would have thought? Add ROCm6 compatibility for HIP, or also ROC. I don't know how you spell it, but this is the Radeon Open Compute platform. The new version, it's added for compatibility, because if you updated your Windows drivers to 23.40 or newer, the HIP will not work. The HIP option would not work. So thanks, Brian from AMD, to make this work. Also, it could happen that CPU settings were not, like for example, path guiding would not be available in some conditions, like the UI wouldn't show it, even though you, for example, if you had GPU as render compute, but your GPU was set to none, the UI wouldn't show. So having a GPU set to none means CPU basically, and the UI would not show you some settings like path guiding, which are CPU only for now. Next, I think that's it for cycles. Let's move to the D for draw and drivers. Interesting. So draw, reuse GPU viewport when doing viewport render animations. What does it mean? Well, it could improve a bit of performance. However, this is done so EEVEE can support motion blur in the viewport. Amazing. Rockem, that's a nice way of calling it. Nice. Shift S to switch nodes back again. I wish. I find it so, like what she's mentioning in, what Julia is mentioning in the node wrangler, which I already have enabled here, is that when you have a node, Shift S now tells you this operator is removed due to changes of node menus. A native implementation of the function is expected in the future. What a lame excuse. We shouldn't remove settings. Well, this is an add-on. Node Wrangler is an add-on. It's not an official Blender feature, unfortunately. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen. You can't just remove a feature and just say, in the future. You should always. Anyways, rant aside, the thing is, the nodes have the node declarations of node names and everything. It's a big list to maintain. If you had to do this manually, it's like you have to see, okay, which node type could be switched to which node type. That this should be natively implemented, but unfortunately nobody had the time to work on it. And I think if anybody from the community would be up for the task, would be much appreciated to port the switch type operator into a native Blender feature. It should really be official. Yeah, it should be official. I know. But the Node Wrangler, unfortunately, does way too many things to make it officially, and some things it does it in a non-standard way. So yeah, it is a we should start getting some of those features and making them native into Blender. Some of them, like would be harder than others, like the switch type. Maybe it's not that hard, but maybe the preview, the preview shader, the Ctrl+Shift+Click on it on shader nodes, it is more tricky because it requires adding a viewer node to cycles and so on and so forth. Anyways, if anybody from the community would be up for the task, I think it would be much appreciated. And it's a nice little project. Port Node Wrangler features one by one into Blender. Next. Oh, I was talking about drivers. There is a few improvements to drivers. One has to do with UI and one with well, they're both related. These are by Alexander Gavrilov. One, implement fallback values for RNA path-based variables. So it could happen that a driver would not work, not work, but yeah, basically it would not work, and then it didn't have a fallback. So when failing, it would set the value to null or to 0. Now there is a new setting that you can specify that is called fallback. Use fallback, and then once you turn it on, you can set a value, for example, like a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, to the, well, it's a driver, so it should be from -1 to 1. No, it can be anything really. But anyways, a fallback value to be used when it doesn't solve to anything. Nice. And there is a UI change that in the drivers editor, if the drivers failed evaluation, that's the word, evaluation, they will now show a red underline. So nice, so you can tell which ones failed evaluation. Nice little usability improvement there. All right, E for, hey, it's the time. If I don't do it now, E for EEVEE, which, by the way, I never noticed that coincidence that the extremely efficient viewport engine experience, also known as EEVEE, has the same name as this character. Now it all makes no sense. Let's continue. EEVEE, look dev, HDRI spheres. The spheres used in the preview mode, those in the material preview mode, they were not working in EEVEE Next. Now they are. Well, EEVEE Next is now EEVEE. EEVEE is EEVEE. No, EEVEE Next, forget about EEVEE Next. It's all EEVEE now. It's the default one. So so now the spheres will show up. But not only that, there has been an improvement on the default color of the diffuse HDRI sphere, because we used to use just the default color for the materials, which was a light gray, like I think it was 80% or so. Not anymore. Now the default color based on community feedback is now 50% gray, or also called mid gray. I think it even has a wiki entry about what is middle gray. Exactly. Sorry for the blinding again. Let me add Wikipedia to the list of pages that I should dark. Oops, not this, but basically it's just entire domain. Nice. All right, next. Let's see. Oh, actually, we're still in EEVEE. There's many. I mean, I don't know if I should go through all of them, because otherwise we're gonna end in April. For example, add horizon scan to the ray tracing module. Okay, this you can read all the updates in the Blender community website. However, one that is worth mentioning and has been around for a while, but it happened to be added right after, well, a while ago, but also the option was added right after I left. So this has been around for a while, since November. Displacement option to EEVEE materials. Oops. Cycles has added the displacement option, like you can use bump or displacement plus bump or displacement only to materials for ages now. Well, now that has come to EEVEE, so you can now set, well, EEVEE next, EEVEE. This you can now set. However, displacement only doesn't make much sense, not particularly useful. So the option is going to be, the option basically defaults to displacement plus bump in the case of EEVEE. So very much welcome. Who would have thought this is displacement, this is bump, and this is all done in real time in EEVEE next. Awesome. The evolution of EEVEE. Nice. Next. Well, there has been so many changes, like UI improvements to change to the light probes from cube map to sphere, planar to plane. This is mainly UI tweaks. The transparent render pass has been added back as well to EEVEE next. So many more, like high C buffer, support for the second layer, refactor ray tracing pipeline. So Blender, like EEVEE next had ray tracing already, but now has been refactored last month. So 10 days ago was the refactor was done. So it's not even out and I already had a refactor. And actually there was another refactor that I wanted to mention. There. So much more, like make the ambient occlusion node respect the normal input, support shader to RGBA on the third materials. So support for that node in the third materials. Light path node support for EEVEE next as well. Translucent BSDF has been support has been added to EEVEE next. Irradiance grid smooth transition, so now they don't look ugly anymore. G buffer optimization, so G buffer is a good buffer. Add translucent contribution, improve probe capture. So translucent materials are going to contribute to the probe captures. Speaking of ray tracing, there is now a presets that you can add to ray tracing by default, but there is only one default by one preset by default. So if you change the settings and you're not sure which ones were the default, you can just always go click on ray tracing and then set default. But you can add your own. That's a good part of it. You can just tweak your settings and add a preset, just like you do in any like always. So let's see if I can find it here. Ray tracing, yeah, you can find the icon over here, and this, there you go. Now you can add your presets, customize it from here. Next, what else? Replace lighting tiles by direct stencil setup. So performance, basically. More efficient GGX BNDF sampling. Nice. And then after that, implement less noisy GGX BNDF sampling for reflection. And those were done by Bison. Nice to see you committing, I guess, again. All right, that is for EEVEE next. Let's switch. The next is after this, there is extension has been improvements as well. The extension platforms, we're gonna talk about it later. It's good to see that they are being worked on. Actually, Dalai is now working together with Campbell and Francesco on that. So more news to come. This is the online platform for handling extensions. Anyways, continuing, FFmpeg improvements in performance also related to rendering with the video sequence editor. For example, this improvement also by Aras, rendering a 300 frame part of the sprite fright edit using H.264 as a encoding with medium quality went from 16 seconds to 12 seconds. And on a Mac is less noticeable the speed up, but it was already faster. Like it's the end result is still around 12 seconds. So super nice. And apparently it's not just the one. When you export the movie, there's so many layers of things that go on, right? Like first you calculate, I don't know, the color space of the image. If you transform the image, you have to calculate the transition or the sampling of it, or the audio on top, or the resizing, or so much going on. So optimizations happen in different steps. Another improvement, it's in the post-processing of the FFmpeg, and this has an improvement of, for example, timings. FFmpeg post-process cost for a single 1080p resolution movie went from 3 milliseconds to 1.18 milliseconds. So much faster, because it is using basically multi-threading for scaling. Nice. And do vertical while vertical flip while converting to RGB where possible. Anyways, so nice to see improvements. And there is even more. I didn't even get to the actual video sequence editor improvements. All right, G for Ghost X11. So this is for you Linux friends. First, support for animated cursor support. Animated cursors, for example, when waiting, like the bouncing ball now bounces, or the clock. Update cursor names, so they support Advaita and Breeze cursor themes. Desktop sampling capability. Remember some time ago it was added for Windows. I don't know for Mac, but for Windows at least you could sample from Windows, from Blender, you could color sample from the desktop. And that was added to Linux. However, there was one little thing missing. Now has been fixed, so it would now work. And tablet event handling should be improved as well. Grease Pencil. I'm not going to cover the Grease Pencil updates, mainly because there are so many, and they are mainly basically catching up with the regular Grease Pencil. Everything new has to do with Grease Pencil version 3. So if I go to GPV3, besides a bunch of cleanups and stuff, there is here material locking, for example. Lock and use materials, hide other operators, lock and unlock material operators, duplicate. Like, look at the amount of people working on it. Antonio, Folk, Hans, Casey, Matthias, Jimmy, Patrick, Pratik, so many people working. And even Jack Luke now is also involved in helping out with geometry nodes. It's a big family basically of improvements. GP3 for 4.1, I don't think so. I can't confirm, but I don't think so. It is still too experimental. Maybe it is. I might be missing, but no. I mean, we only have 2 more weeks for, and it's a big project. Let's talk about geometry now. Definitely not. Nice. Thank you, Hans. Definitely not. Thank you. I was correct. No GPV3 for 4.1. It is a huge project. It's basically rewriting the entire everything about Grease Pencil. All right, Hans, you are here. You're part of the geometry nodes project team. There has been so many improvements, but one, it's gonna break the planet, right? Is this the bake node that we all dreamt of? Is this the freeze node? I didn't even know this was already here. How long ago was this? Last month, 18th of December. These people are amazing. This commit is huge commit, 93 commits in one, 33 files changed. New bake node, which allows saving and loading intermediate geometry. Only if it can make cookies. It can make cookies. It can make anything. And it's going to be faster because you can use that for example, to use in a render engine or to bake parts of a node tree for better performance. If you're done with all the modeling part and first assembling your scene and you don't need it to be dynamic anymore, you can bake it and then move it forward. So cool. So for now, the format that is written to disk is not considered to be an import-export format. It's not guaranteed the data written with one Blender version can be read by another Blender version. Handle with care. For that, it's better to use the proper interchange format. Better support for those will be added eventually. We also plan an import bake node that allows reading the Blender specific bake data independent of the bake node and independent frames. The baking works similar to the baking in the simulation zones, UI and implementation wise. So you have a bake node, you can bake still and bake the animation, and it doesn't do automatic caching. So you go here, you click bake animation. It even has the nice info on the top. So nice. Anyways, you can read more on this here, but this is kind of huge. Such as this next feature by Hans. There is a new node in town called the index switch node. Also highly requested. Similar to the menu switch, but this is like a simpler version for now. Eventually, I think the code will be shared between them, apparently, from what I read here. But it's a kind of, you can use it as a menu for now. Like you have a bunch of geometries and you can use an index that you can expose in any way you want and use that in, like, expose it in your node. So basically kind of a menu switch, but with numbers. So cool. You add the index switch. It has 2 inputs by default. You can add many more with the circle, similar to other parts of Blender. Pseudo enum. Yes, kind of. But an enum will come. This is a simpler version, but it should come in the same release. So it's all 4.1, as mentioned here by Hans. Next, another new node by Ilya is the sort elements node. Implements the design in this task from 6 months ago. So thank you, Ilya, for working on this, as well as some speedups. There is 2 speedups done by Ilya in this and the last, well, actually more. This is the edges to face groups now should be faster, around 10%, except for some very, very, very corner cases where it's 10,000 times slower. So if you catch one of those, report it, please. Parallel edges to face groups now should be 7 times faster, thanks to Ilya. Hans has added rotation sockets to the object info node and to the change instance rotation node. Sorry, to the instant rotation node, not the change. Input and output zone nodes cannot be muted anymore. The extrude mesh node has been rewritten. It should lead to some, it might improve performance, but it makes Blender's binary 58 kilobytes smaller. Nice, welcome. Plus a bunch of other improvements, miscellaneous improvements that make it more future-proof. Remove requirement of drag and drop of geometry input. So the error that you would see sometimes, like the first input must be a geometry socket, or the node group must have a geometry input socket, it's no longer needed because node groups don't need to have a geometry input, actually. It's not required. Another speed up at Ilia is on the face group boundaries. This is a much larger improvement. Basically, you won't see much of a difference in the for example, with small resolution like this cube 100 by 100 by 100, basically the same. But with 1000 by 1000 by 1000, it's pretty big. It went from 520 milliseconds to 140 milliseconds. Nice. Ooh, new node. I forgot to mention this in the new node section. Add active camera input node. Nice. This is pretty nice. There is a new node basically that tells you which camera is the active one. It has an output. I guess it has an object output socket, and it tells you if the has active camera. Isn't the active camera also always active? Or is it because there can be an active camera that it's... I'm confused. Isn't the active camera always gonna have an active camera? Or is it if the scene has an active camera or not? I wait for the reply. Next. Add support. Well, this counts as a new node. However, it's not a new node. The black body node from shading is now available in geometry nodes. Nice. Basically the same, but now in geometry nodes. More performance improvement by Ilia. Improve shortest edge path node performance. Let's see here, so we can have a better understanding of what happened. For a cuboid of 700 by 700 by 700 and a random selection, it will change. A random selection of the edge vertex will go from 1000 milliseconds or 1 second to 618 milliseconds. Nice. So easier and faster to find shortest path. All right, so Hans replied, there might be no camera in the scene, but that output isn't in the latest version anyway. Okay, so that's a reminder to update for people making. Thanks, Doug, for making the patch. But yeah, it's a bit of a pain sometimes to update the images, but it's nice to that the image, the latest images are the image in the patch shows the latest state of the node or whatever change, especially when it has to do with UI. Next, initial display. Wait, I'm having technical issues here. If you see, okay. Something is going on with the computer now. Okay, now this is, sometimes some events get stuck. I think I might stop using Linux for streaming because the weirdest things happen sometimes, and it's a bit annoying that it happens in the middle of a live stream. Even though it's a long live stream, the longer you stream, the more chances there are things will screw up. But let's see, where was I? Like, really, I'm scrolling and sometimes it starts zooming in. All right, I'm scrolling, and if it starts zooming in, I just call it a day. Okay, let's see here. Where was I? Initial display of attribute values as text in the 3D viewport by Julian Plack. Previously, the attribute values were only visualized as color overlay in the 3D viewport. Now it's possible to optionally show the attribute as text. Oh, no way. Like, oh, that's so cool. Like the like when having a mesh analysis, or like the edge lengths and stuff. Wow, that's so awesome. It's a pity this text is a bit unreadable sometimes. I think maybe Harley would like to, or someone from the community would like to work on this. Maybe it should be like an outline, like when using this, it could have like a backdrop around the text, so it's always readable, because sometimes it can be a bit hard to read. Let's see. Next. Remove experimental volume nodes. Yeah, the SDF volume nodes have been removed because they will, the new grid socket will make these nodes obsolete and provide more elegant ways of implementing the feature. So yeah, it is, has been removed for the time being. So there is now a new volume grid socket support. This initial implementation for the volume grid nodes that has been discussed during November 2023 Geometry Nodes workshop. It adds it does initial support for passing volume grids around in sockets. Furthermore, it adds 2 nodes. Both are initially hidden under the new volume nodes experimental option. New volume nodes, but if there is no old volume nodes, then it should just be volume nodes. 1. Get name grid gets or extracts a volume grid from a volume geometry, and store named grid, which puts a volume grid back into a volume with a name. Nice. And last but not least, support panels in geometry nodes modifier. So this has to do with UI. The geometry nodes modifier, I mean, this and menus, and that's it. I think you can make, eventually you will be able to make regular modifiers using geometry nodes, right? Because this basically lets you add sub panels to organize your custom nodes, your custom geometry nodes. So cool. Nice. Awesome. And actually there is something else related to that. Right, time to move. H for Hydra. G. How long are we have I been streaming? 1 hour 13 minutes, and we're still in letter H. Let's see. Hydra. Parallelize and simplify. And the computer got stuck again. Where was I here? Okay. Parallelize and simplify sub-mesh export. Only calculate normals on the necessary domain. Parallelize export, and long story short, with optimizations and resizing vectors and simplifying, it should be now much faster. How much faster? Well, in a test with 6 million vertices, exporting to Hydra, the Hydra export was from 791 milliseconds to 130. Mr. Elephant went from also around 780 milliseconds to 270 milliseconds. And a crash went also, so a 1.5 million verts went from crash to 48 milliseconds. That's quite an upgrade. I wish all the crashes could be improved to go 48 milliseconds fast. And also the Hydra export now support the legacy hair particle curves. So the good old hair particles. Get well soon, Pablo. Thank you. I hope I hope. It's been more than a week that I had this cough and everything. I hope it's over soon. Let's move into internationalization. There is a couple changes. Actually, there is way more, but I'm not going to go through all of them. You can find them all on Blender community. For example, there has been a lot of changes in the way Blender shows text, and thanks to that, Damien improved the internationalization, so it will be possible to translate the default text that text objects have. So instead of just saying text, so when you add text, just say text, in other languages will be possible to translate this into something else. Nice. And also Belarusian language has been added. I don't know how far that is, but we can check in translate.blender.org. And there must be a Blender UI check. UI, and Belarusian is 1%. All right, it's a long way to go. Next. Image buffer, read single layer XYZ channels as a combined image. Also related to image buffer and performance, this improvement by Aras, also related to the many other performance improvements you have done, makes it so the transforming an image is now much faster. How much faster? Well, in the sequencer at 4K Ultra HD with 2 image strips that need a transform, so 2 image strips that are moving around, the frames per second went from 18.7 to 26 frames per second. And on a Mac, it went from 27 frames per second to 31. So much faster in general. Like if you put together all the improvements, much faster. All right. I need your attention. What I'm about to show you has been requested by everyone in the community for so long, for so many times, for years, since I have a memory of, since I've been doing this show, I'm way before that. And I haven't seen as much noise of that I was expecting. Behold. Drag and drop multiple files in Blender. I know it's pretty basic. If you're using some other software, this is pretty basic. But people have been requesting this for so long that when I went to the task of Guillermo and I saw that it has like 4 hearts, it's like, where are you? There's more than 4 people requesting this. This patch allows operators in Blender to use multiple files, so you can import multiple OBJ, FBX, whatever. You can add multiple, you can drag and drop multiple objects, multiple everything. So if you're the kind of people that reacts to things, show some love. The video showing here, you can see how you can drag 3 OBJ files into Blender and it will open all 3 of them. Isn't that what you were expecting? This is a huge amount of work that needed to be done for this. You would imagine this, how hard can it be? Instead of opening one, open multiple. Well, OBJ or like FBX is an add-on, so opening multiple it's different than internally opening an OBJ. Now OBJ is built in Blender, but it used to be an add-on. But also this should be added in a way that works with add-ons. So not only that, but Guillermo Venegas added the option for add-ons or whatever Python API script that you're using can register file handlers. So it can say like, okay, I have I don't know, a file format .pablo, my file .pablo, and I want Blender to do something when I drag and drop the .pablo files. Well, now you register this, and it now works. So thank you, Guillermo, because many people were waiting for this. Add support for drag and drop files to file handlers. So nice. Finally. When can I import that, Pablo? I don't know, and I don't know how it works for some. I don't know if I want to test it because my computer hasn't been behaving well properly, but I don't know if it has been added for everything. Maybe still has to be added. It has to be done for other, like if I have a few images here, let's see, Blender head and report, maybe it wasn't added for images. Yeah, for example, images still opens only one when I had two, but it's okay. Support will be added eventually. Now the code is there. So community, jump in and help Guillermo. Anyways. Next. Well, not only thanks to Guillermo, but also to Jesse that has reviewed and committed this, and all the other developers that have been working on this. Next, Linux, L for Linux. This is a small one that Stan has done for FlatHub. This applies it to Blender, so it could happen that when you could have multiple Blenders in the, like Blender could register itself multiple times on the taskbar, on the dock, that this should fix it. All right, M for mesh and make, mesh. M for make the preference option remap relative apply to all save operations. So this is a feature that should go into core, I guess, or saving. So yeah, now the remap relative before, it would only apply to save, but not to save as or save copy. Now it does. Remap relative, we like you. Thank you, Sebastian. Next, M. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to talk after this live stream, but let's continue. M for mesh. Bunch of performance improvements also by hands. 1. Move Sculpt mask to a generic attribute. Actually, I think the further we go into the show, many of the features I'm going to be reading them for the first time, so might not be as accurate, but the titles are here and the full list is on blender.community. This is the Sculpt mask now being moved to a generic attribute. Nice. More moving into making things generic. Copy small caches when moving mesh data to the main database. It saves 100 milliseconds on a Ryzen 7950X. So nice. Parallelize remaining topology maps. Nice. A index creation, vertex to face index went from 9.8 milliseconds to 1.7 milliseconds. Nice. Remesh attribute transfer also has been improved by hands. So very much welcome. Here are the numbers if you want to see. Then another improvement, avoid calculating corner normals for drawing flat shaded meshes. Why would you show corner normals if it's flat shaded? Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you, Hans. Add viewport normal simplify option. Oh, nice. Yeah, this is nice because we sometimes calculating custom normals can slow down your viewport, so it's cool to see. Where is that option? Let's see. Files change is in the UI. Simplify volume, simplify normals. In the chat, in the what is it? Let me check. So it must be on simplify viewport normals. Nice. So skip computing custom normals and face corner normals for displaying meshes in the viewport. Neat. M for multi-res, well, related to mesh actually. use index mask for subdivision CCG phase updates. What does it mean? Improvements. It's now multi-threaded to finding which phases are affected. So the runtime goes, in this case, with this test with 1 million phase grid, went from 0.63 milliseconds to 0.12 milliseconds. Fast. And for nodes, improve socket picking tolerances. Have you ever had a hard time trying to pick the sockets, like click and drag sockets? Sometimes you will end up like doing a box selection instead. Well, this has been improved by Jack. Thank you, Jack. Also, what I shown in the bake node, that the bake node now has an information on the top, extra info about what's going on, like how many frames have been baked. This is now more generic, so it can be added to any node. Basically, any node now can have a fallback, a callback that will display something on top. Nice, making it generic. And Diana G has added integers and Boolean sockets to shading nodes, to cycles and EEVEE. They are handled as floats by cycles and the EEVEE, but at least now they show up, they work. So super nice. Awesome. Thank you, Diana. I don't think I have seen you over here. Nice to see you working in this area. So cool. Next. for OB. Don't applause yet. I know it's a great feature. This is the right sound. OBJ. Add import option to create a collection hierarchy by splitting names with a separator. In some workflows, you could have an option, for example, like a pipe or a slash in the name, and that would of your path of your object, and that could be used for creating hierarchy in your collections. Now this also adds the basically you can specify which separator, I think. Yeah, for slash or pipe. P for Python. We're getting there. How far? Oh, she. And I ran out of mate. It's gonna be tough, but let's go through it. Come on, let's go through it. P for Python. Add-on creators and script creators. You can now create panels, sub-panels, anywhere in your UI. It doesn't have to be, they're not going to be all put at the bottom, and you don't have to define them as panels anymore. You can define them via the layout. So you can say like layout.panel for your panel, and then it's going to be shown whatever in the UI. That's so cool. This was a limitation where our sub panels will be drawn at the very bottom only. Now you can put them anywhere. Next, there's new method. Well, actually, there's so many improvements in Python, in the Python API. You should check the full post on Blender community and the list. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to cover questions today. I see you already tried, but we'll see. Anyways, the few that I wanted to mention is the panels, the new preferences, file paths, new and remove methods for the asset libraries, so you can create them from Python. And to mention that support for Python 3.10 has been dropped. So now the minimum is 3.11. I mentioned this before, good to mention in the Python section. All right. S for Sculpt. Improve the hide show operator performance for the mesh. It's the performance is huge. It went from timings when in a 16 million vertex mesh. Hiding a mask section went from 170 milliseconds to 33 milliseconds. Showing all with a small box hidden went from 220 milliseconds to 10 milliseconds. Showing all went from 170 milliseconds, which is fast. 100 milliseconds is a tenth of a second. It's super fast. However, now is 0.36 milliseconds. So it's faster than some screens update even. Awesome. So cool. Thank you, Hans. Then, removal the redundant reveal all operator, because it's basically just the hide operator. Multi-thread the show all operation. So it halved the time in some tests with from 10 milliseconds to 5. Anyway, everything should be much faster related to hiding and showing. Also, specialized mask fill invert operator per PVVH type. Nice. Improving performance theoretically and reducing memory usage. Not bad. Separate the invert visibility operator from the face sets. So they're now separate. They're not the same thing. Nice. Undo, improve, undo, update tagging in Sculpt mode. Re-implement the face sets visibility operator, multi-threaded, so it's about 3 times faster. Refactor accessing face sets, which should also lead to improvement in because the face set gesture and they have been refactored to be multi-threaded and only push undo steps for actually change nodes. So better undo, multi-threaded, better updates. Nice. I don't think I'm gonna manage to be able to speak at the end of, and then I have to do it in Spanish. Oh my. Okay. I'll try to save my voice. Make hide poly pointer in Sculpt session constant. Saves 1 byte per face, which if you have a bunch of faces, that's a lot. Better memory usage. Avoid expensive mask access in remaining cases. Another performance improvement. And finally, improve mesh normals update performance, which happens all the time when you sculpt. Basically, should be much faster. When there are about 2,400 nodes, when you are affecting like 9 million vertices, what used to take half a second now is 84 milliseconds. Super nice. So yeah, basically Sculpt fast, good. Thank you, Hans. As for selection and shaders. 1. Selection. What is selection? Remove limit of number items which can be selected at once. I didn't even know there was a limit, but now it's gone. Selection buffer was limited. What was the limit? There were several bug reports basically about the maximum amount of objects selected. Interesting, I never noticed. Only 8,000 bones were selectable, could be selected, and only 65,000 objects could be selectable. Okay, 8,000 bones. If you have 8,193 bones, you may want to reconsider. However, with rigging nodes coming sometime, this would easily be achieved, I think. And also complex rigs should be possible. So cool. I actually didn't know that we had this limit. Next, shaders. Change the default index of refraction from 1.45 to 1.5. So the default used to be 145, but OpenPVR and standard surface use 1.5, so might as well match it. The distance is very small anyways. And also some of the sockets had like a different value. They didn't even have like a 0 by default. So it's good that now they do have a default. And the default is consistent with PVR, with OpenPVR and standard surface. T for another improvement by Guillermo. T for text editor. Small usability improvement. But once you use it, you're gonna notice all the time. If you have a bunch of text selected, for example, you selected a part of a word and then search in the text editor, that selection will be used for searching. Doesn't make sense. Yay, it does. Let's see how it works. Let's see. So I have a template and I select this, Control F. Oh, nice. Control F. Now right is here, and then might as well search, right? Like Control F and then search. Next. What I wish we do is to have this case wrap and all enabled by default, so we can, so when you search it just wraps around. Otherwise, who wants to search until the end and then not search again? Maybe someone does, but I think it shouldn't be the default. All right. Let's go to the next section. U for user interface. How many hours have I been streaming? Only 1.5 hours. Which sometimes I stream for 3 hours in the Spanish live stream. 1.5 hours. UI. First, by Leon. Improved menu drop shadow. Small, but I've noticed this a few times and it's so nice to see it. Have you ever noticed that sometimes the shadows will be pointy or like broken? Well, not anymore, because we have amazing people like Leon, like Harley, that look into these details and improve them. For example, this broken shadow, when you have a big shadow on your menus, now it's nicely wrapping around. Lovely. So cool. Thank you, Leon. And also with other nodes like also, have you ever noticed that in the menus, in the frames, the shadow would be like you could see through and you could see where the shadow starts. So it kind of looks like an embossed frame, which was a bit weird. The result now is that the frame is just a frame and the shadow is behind it. Isn't that great? I was so confused sometimes. I would see, it would look like some nodes were darker, but it's not that they were darker, it's just the shadow that was behind on semi-transparent nodes. So awesome. Thank you, Leon, for working on this. The issue was also in the text editor. It was all over the place. I never noticed. Thank you, Leon. Next, Philip made it so when you when you use the select pattern operator, the pattern field is immediately on focus. So you can do select pattern and type right away. That is awesome. This is a one-liner, but we need this in many other places in Blender. If you ever notice one of those, go ahead, maybe try to fix it yourself, but otherwise maybe mention it somewhere. It should be easy to find, basically. If you specify the property, Blender will focus on that property as soon as the pop-up is open. For example, when you move, like when you move, no, not when you move, when you rename, you see, like when you rename, the field starts focus right away. Well, this is the same concept, but for the select pattern. New icons for area join and swap by Alexei Adamitsky. Nice. How do they look? We can have a look to how do they look. right click, vertical split, join, and swap areas. All these icons are new, and they give you an idea. I mean, horizontal, I don't know if they were extremely needed, but they're nice to have. Vertical split, and they give you a preview of how it would look. It's nice to have. Also, because that way you could have them, we could have them as a toolbar somewhere one day when we have editor tabs. Next, Damian has fixed a bunch of, well, not only fixed, but also improved a few messages. Some options, some properties had typos, but some didn't even explain anything, like the frame step setting. The description was the same as the name, and I'm not a big fan when that happens. Like the name is frame step and description frame step. No, the description is number of frames to keep forward while baking each frame, and many like that. So thank you, Damian, for working on that. When opening Blender, you see a flash of a window until the UI, the actual UI shows up. The default color was a bit too bright, even though Blender's by default is dark. So we cannot set that dynamically, but at least now by default it's going to be a dark window instead of a light window. So if you're in the middle of the night with no lights in your room, now you're not going to be blinded with this color, but with this slightly darker. I would probably go as far as make it dark, full dark, and then so it would look like, I don't know if that makes sense. When another improvement by Harley, improvement on user experience, is that when searching for in the file browser, for example, and there's no results, now it's going to tell you, Blender's going to tell you, hey, no results found. Nice. Instead of just not showing anything. That's small but great improvement. Another improvement, this was requested by the community at some point. I remember somebody was poking me about this. I don't remember where, but the background images that you can use on the camera, for example, there was no option to apply the color transforms to that image. In Blender, that option is called View as Render, which is a bit weird in the image data blocks. The naming is a bit strange, View as Render, but that's what it does basically. This option now has been exposed. There's no new feature, it's just the option wasn't exposed. So it's nice that now it is exposed. Maybe we should at some point rename this. View as Render is a bit confusing. What does it mean, render? View as Render. Maybe apply render color transforms or something like that. Dynamic browser file browser tooltips. This is super nice. Also by Harley. Look at that. The tooltips for some file types are now going to be much more useful. For example, an image will show you the size of the image, as in the pixels when it was modified and the actual size, file size. A blend file is going to tell you which version was it saved with. For example, I have here on the splash screen, if you mouse over, Blender, this one was saved with Blender 4.1. 4.1, and maybe all these files were 4.1. Yes, well, all of them 4.1. But isn't it useful to know which file version it was saved? It is. Also, you may have noticed they have thumbnails. When you go to File, Open, Recent, now there is a file version and a thumbnail before you open it. Nice. By the way, this is the box that I made for the birthday. But actually, no, this is not the final one. This is the one that I made while I was in Amsterdam, and then I went home and I finished it so it's on my laptop. Anyways, super nice improvement. For a video, for example, if you mouse over a video, it's gonna tell you the resolution, how many frames, at which frame rate, and the total in how long is it in seconds, in minutes, in the total time. So cool. Next, you made that. What, the box? I made it. Yes, I did it. It's I do have the, I don't know if this is, well, no, this is the small one. This is the one that is made, but I made another one that it looks much cooler, but it's not here, unfortunately. It must be somewhere. It's on the website. I'm sorry, I was about to sneeze and I think it's a false alarm. Next. Oh, actually, in that same menu, the file open recent, there is now an option to clear the recent files. Clear the recent files list. I don't know if that should be capitalized, but this though should have a confirmation dialog, I hope, because yes, it has. Otherwise, it would be a bit annoying because this actually would delete the file itself. And here, recent files list is uppercase, but list is lowercase. So I think we should unify this, the description only, the tooltip. Next, recent menu previews. This is what I just mentioned. Improved operator confirmations. Oh, nice to see this patch finally landing. This was around for a while. It's a design improvement, so some operators can be defined. This is not only for Blender, but for also add-ons and anybody making their own pop-ups, to make them a bit more prominent when it's needed. For example, some like save startup file. That's kind of a big deal. You're overwriting your startup file, so it's good that it makes a bit more of an impact. The same with load factory startup file. I think these are some of the examples, but OBS says that it restarted. F, am I back? Am I alive? Give me a thumbs up on the chat if I'm alive. I just had a message. Working fine here. Thank you, Hans. Thank you, Clivis. Thank you, everyone. You never left. You probably saw the message. He said like disconnected. Let's continue. I think it's just trying to tell me that I should wrap this up, but I'm not, because there is much more here left. Improve confirmation dialog for the clear recent list. Nice. What I just, great minds of the same UI module think alike. Yes, the pop-up was actually part of another commit, and again I mentioned that some of these commits I'm seeing them for the first time here. I haven't covered everything because it was a huge list. But updated, the next change, updated auto keying button icon. Harley made an improvement to the keying button, the automatic keying button, that makes it a bit more clear. So it used to be always full white, and the only difference would be that the button would be blue, basically, and that's not very readable. In Blender 2.7, when we used to have colored icons, the icon was red, which is very common for red like recording buttons, like in Audacity or any audio or recording software. So we didn't go that far. There was a patch that had some of those like, I think this was suggested at some point, but blue on red doesn't always work well. The improvement for now is to leave it non-filled when it's off and then filled when it's on. That's already a huge improvement, and if we want color icons, we should maybe have it as a separate discussion. It's good to have this one in at least. Context menu, support for changing menu and panel shortcuts. There were some specific cases, for example, the undo history operator were not, they didn't let you change the shortcut. Now you can. This affected other cases too, but this is the one that was more obvious in Blender. Aaron, Blendify, has improved the viscosity panel and the, made it a sub-panel of diffusion. So this has to do with the physics settings. So better UI there. Harley made an improvement that fixes some cases, which I haven't run into many, but it's nice to see that it is fixed. That sometimes it could happen that the buttons, even though they were part of a group, they would have a shadow, like an emboss, and that has been fixed. The view selected operators sometimes would not show the shortcut. Now it does in the pie menu. Nice. And finally, the unit name, some unit names have been improved by Damian as well. You can read some of them here. Like ton is a tonne. Like it goes from Ton Rosendal to Lucas Tonne. And some others too, like kilometers per hour instead of km/h. Some small changes there that improve Blender readability overall. Let's move to U for USD. Improved texture coordinate translation by Charles. The USD transform 2D shader was previously ignored, and now the material red would stop when it found these nodes. This resulted in many surfaces having their textures mapped incorrectly when imported into Blender. So nice. And worse, resulted in the loss of data when round tripping back to Blender. So eek. That's kind of a big one. So texture coordinate translation is now better in USD. Apply material binding API to curves with materials during export by Jesse. Next, Michael has contributed to optionally author the subdivision schema on export. And this is by Apple. Nice. I wonder what they're using this for. Import scene graph instances. Add support for importing USD instanceable primitives into Blender as collection instances. Nice. Remove the import instance proxies and use instances. It's kind of huge. People were asking for this for a while, right? To use actual proper instances. Awesome. Wow. And finally, also a huge one. Gee, how many things I missed in USD? Support for armature and shape key export in USD. Nice. New functionality to export armatures and shape keys as USD skeletons and blend shapes. Added armature, only deform bones, and shape key USD export options. Not bad. Awesome. Next, UV. 2 improvements. 1, restore axis alignment support for the Smart UV project. Nice. Smart UV now it was a regression from Python to C. Now this brings it back by Campbell. And speaking of light map, I wasn't speaking of that, but actually worth talking about because it's now faster. How much faster? Well, on a mesh with 20,000 triangles, the old method took 40 seconds. And now it takes 0.23 seconds. So 200 milliseconds. That's kind of a big deal. 5 days ago by Sebastian Witt. Thank you, Sebastian. Awesome. All right, we're at letter V now. VFont. 1. Use VFont. Well, this is by Harley. This is huge. We mentioned this actually on our presentation at the Blender conference. Load VFont curves using VLF API rather than local free type calls. The text objects currently use the free type library directly. This is a duplication of code and also means that this area cannot take advantage of a more complex features of the VLF API. This PR allows VFont to use BFont, which for the user doesn't mean anything that like the VFont and BFont. However, you may notice that Blender can now display these items using the actual internal font, and in the future can support variable access features. An access in this kind of language means bold, italic, like in the font itself. So this is pretty huge. In the future, it will support, for example, Arabic or other languages. Basically, once text right to left languages are supported and so on and so forth. But it's kind of huge that Blender can use this. Anyways, there's a bunch of Vulkan updates, but the most important one with V is the video sequence editor. Most of them, I think they are performance improvements. I haven't seen all of them, but let's start. 20K DC ASDD 28. Okay, this user has made it so the strip volume. So scenes use the strip volume property. So instead of defaulting to the volume of the entire scene, each strip can have its own volume. Even if it was the same scene, you can have different volumes. That's super nice. I never run into this limitation, but I can imagine can be a bit annoying. So super nice. The scene strip volume is independent of that scene. Awesome. Thank you, 20K DC. All right. Speed ups. Adas has been on a roll for months now, and after all the improvement that I already mentioned in the image buffer and color space and stuff, sequencer timeline UI repainting is 3 or 4 times faster now. So the timeline is faster. The waveform display is also faster. How much faster? Well, from 16, something that used to play at 16 frames per second now is 54 frames per second. Something that on a Mac that used to play at 25 frames per second is now 86 frames per second. That's huge. And it's not just that, actually. That's just one of them. Oh my gosh. Luma waveform display. So the waveform display, the scope, is now multi-threaded, which on a 4K resolution sequencer display, the time to calculate the waveform went from, in an example with regular images, from 127 milliseconds to 6.4 milliseconds. Insane. Separate colors, same, 160 milliseconds to 13. What used to take 86 milliseconds for float images, 11. Again, huge improvements. The show overexpose, the option, the one that in the sequencer where it would, like, when an area that was a bit too bright would show with the zebra stripes. Now it's multi-threaded, so it means that on a 4K UHD resolution, it went from 16 milliseconds to 5.3. Insane. And a float image, the difference is less, but just the draw zebra part went from 22 milliseconds to 7 milliseconds. The whole scope is still expensive due to color management, but still massive. The gamma cross effect is now 4 times faster. The glow effect is between 6 and 10 times faster, thanks to multi-threading and some magic by Adas. The wipe effect, so if you want to redo Star Wars in the video sequence editor, is now 6 to 20 times faster. You can read the full numbers here, but just by that is already insane. Kinda huge. The solid color is now faster. So the playback went from 9 milliseconds to 11. More or less, the do solid color, so the actual function for one effect went median from 7 to milliseconds to 3.8 milliseconds, so not bad. So yeah, many improvements. The not only performance, but there's also some other. Well, now let's continue with performance. Otherwise, I'm gonna skip some more important features. The Gaussian blur is now faster. What used to take 30 milliseconds, now for 50 milliseconds. And 400 less lines of code. Nice. Anyway, I knew. Oh, this is pretty big. Well, big and small at the same time. Do you know the feature copy paste? Well, it is now supported for copy pasting strips in Blender from one Blender to another. So go to one Blender, select a bunch of strips, Ctrl C, go to another Blender, Ctrl V, and it will paste them in your video sequence editor. It would also be persistent, so you can you can copy, you can close Blender, you can open Blender again, paste it, and it will be there. Same, it works the same way as the regular object copying. But yeah, pretty big. Next, implement selection of linked retiming keys. This feature improves the workflow where it is necessary to select all the retiming keys after one that is selected in order to change the speed of only one segment. By Richard. Keep existing retiming when changing the speed. This adds the preserve current retiming option to the set speed operator. This is enabled by default. When changing the speed of retiming segments, the strip changes length instead of changing the next segment speed. Next. A more intuitive UI control for the waveform display mode. Interesting. Use a more consistent radio selection for the waveform display, not an enum radio hybrid. Ah, okay, so instead of having these 3 dots, is now just a regular enum. Nice. Nice one. Aras. I don't know if it should be on, strip, off. Because it's strip is also on. I wonder if it should be like all strip disabled or something like that, because I think we do have somewhere else in some other part of Blender we do have a similar. I might be wrong. Anyway, next. Display audio waveforms by default. Nice, finally. Since the last Blender version, thanks to the Google Summer of Code, I think, waveforms are now much faster and they should be on by default. So now they are. Awesome, like a regular video editing software. Next, scope improvements. Improve the look of them so they feel less like from year 1998. Hey, what's wrong with 1998? I know people were born that year and they are just fine. Some of the scopes got slightly faster in the process, others stayed the same performance. Remove video sequence editor scopes related data from space sequence ANA and move it into the runtime instead. Hey, a picture. I'm curious how does it look? How do they look now? So what if I add a video, or does this show the scopes? Scope metadata view. Where were the scopes? I don't remember. No, these are the tools. Anyways. They are in the PR, but I don't see them in the PR here. Well, I don't have the PR. Maybe I'm missing something. It's not a video. Should it be a video? Anyway, I shouldn't be... I should probably be trying to wrap up this show instead of keep looking at pictures and not even remembering where things are. Fix various off by half a pixel issues in the image transform. The code inside the image transform, which is pretty much only used inside the video sequencer, was not correctly doing mapping between pixel and texel spaces. Interesting. So there were a lot of like off by half a pixel. Never noticed that. Have you? Oh, in these cases maybe it is. Eek. And now it's all properly offset. Look at that. Nice. Awesome. Richard made a bunch of commits. Don't draw unused properties in the redo panel. Hey, that's nice. Hide retiming keys when the retiming is reset. Also nice. And set the speed operator. Usability improvement. Set the speed operator property with speed of selected segment or strip. If more than one item is selected, speed is preset to 100%. Nice. So if I have set speed, this is one operator that could benefit from having the speed already selected. So you press R here, and then this should be on by default, I think. What do you think? And then, so you can press R50, and then, like in DaVinci has that, I think. You press a key and immediately lets you set it. And the sidebar of the... Is it in the sidebar of the sequencer, right? I already have it in the sidebar of the sequencer. Anyways. Allow mirror axis crossing when moving a transition key. Transition, retiming keys move as if they are a mirror across a point. It is possible to allow them to cross this point instead of limiting transition duration. Nice. So you can cross the mirror axis. Header drop down. Maybe it's just me that, here, or not. No. There you go. So is this how post 1998 looks like? So it's a whole section. I thought it would. We used to have it as a. Oh, I'm mixing them up with the image editor, right? That the image editor has them in the scopes. This is what I was picturing. So this is 1998. That's why I was looking for it. Okay, I'm not that stupid. I was looking at them in the wrong place. This is the sequence editor, and I was picturing it in the image editor. I'm not that senile yet. Cool. Okay, cool. Last but not least, add retiming operator macros. Add the retiming, add freeze frame slide, and retiming add transition slide operator macros to move keys after adding instead of using a fixed duration. Nice. So basically add new features. I think the description makes it sound very technical, but it is just two new operators. Add freeze frame slide and transition slide. So it's like when you move and slide, like a move and translate or extrude and move. Awesome. Anyways, I cannot speak anymore. And that was my last feature for today, so it's a good combo. Gee, 2 hours, but we managed to get through 1,500 commits that I managed to put down to, I don't know, a bunch. And this is the list. I went through all this today. Thank you for enduring with me. I hope you appreciate the amount of work that was, and that I don't think there will be that many next week. So I wonder if I should just skip next week and try to have a nicer one the week after. You let me know. Or maybe I could actually go and try to answer the questions that you left this week, because I'm sorry, but I think 2 hours is kind of if people complain for 1 hour long videos, imagine for not you. I'm not talking about you that watch this live, but let's see you. Let's see you next time. I appreciate that you stay until the end. Thanks for watching. Thanks for waiting all this time. I had a great time with in southern Patagonia in Argentina, and with family, with friends, catching up with people. I even in Ushuaia, the southernmost city in the world, I was at a bar having a drink, and somebody was like, "Blender." I was like, well, not Pablo, but yes, in a way. And literally someone like, if you like Ushuaia, literally, just for people not aware, I mean, it's, you can skip this part, you can go away, but look, this here, literally, in Ushuaia is the Argentinian city, is the southernmost city in the world. I mean, there are more, there's people living here, of course, too, right? But the city, it's here. Someone there at a bar literally said Blender. So that is nice. That was super nice. I met people all over the place. I was driving around, and people, I was sharing it on Instagram, and people, even here in the middle of Chubut, which I've never been before there, somebody wrote me, and then that they were there, and they used Blender, and then I dropped by, and we had a chat, and it's super nice. I hope to do that more often, or in other places in the world. Blender is everywhere, really. You just talk to anyone. Even I could just keep talking, sorry, but really anywhere. You mentioned 3D or something related to design, and Blender is all over the place. It might not be industry standard, yeah, who cares? It is fun to use. Everybody can use it, and it's going to be like that forever, and even more so now that we have more people supporting it monthly or with single donations, and contributing. 20 more authors that we showed today that were added to the list of contributors to Blender, and even every day there is more and more people contributing to Blender, so it can only get better from now. So I would say let's do this again sometime. Let's see what's new in Blender in the next episode, whether it's next week or the week after. If there are new things to talk about, I will definitely cover it. Actually, I want to ask Dalai how that bake node works and all that. Thanks for tuning in. I would see you again. Wait, let me make it louder, because people say that it's not loud enough. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I will see you again next week for the next time for the next Blender Today live. Watch out your ear holes. Was that loud enough? Maybe not too. Thanks everyone. Had a great time. Happy blending. Have a great week. Bye bye.